Welcome to today's edition of the Anaglyph Jukebox. You never know what you'll find on the old jukebox. Let's press B31. Okay, we've got Steve Ditko 3D. Steve Ditko, co-creator of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, characters now part of a multi-billion-dollar cinema franchise, died 2 years ago, age 90, on June 29, 2018. He received a New York Times obit. This is notable because the wider world only seems to take notice of a comic book artist when his or her work is adapted to film. The Times has only recently granted comic book creators obituaries. Created as disposable entertainment for children, today's fan can buy the catalog of the Ditko One-Man Museum show at the Palma de Mallorca in Spain from the fall of 2016. It's called Ditko Unleashed, an American Hero, and it weighs almost 6 pounds. Steve Ditko from Johnstown, Pennsylvania, is as fascinating a character as any he created, and none of his work has ever been converted to 3D with this exception. Substance, a character created by Jack C. Harris, designed and drawn by Ditko specifically for 3D, with 3D conversion by Ray Zone, and the 1950s public domain stories reprinted in this same issue of Substance. Ditko actually worked on the first and only issue of the 1953 Captain 3D by Jack Kirby. He and Mort Meskin, another phenomenal artist, inked that book. After serving in the Army, Ditko studied in 1950 with Batman artist Jerry Robinson under the GI Bill at the Cartoonist and Illustrators School, co-founded by the great Tarzan artist Bern Hogarth. This became the School of Visual Arts, and no one ever heard of it again. Ditko created or revamped many characters over his long career, including the Creeper and Shade the Changing Man for DC, Spider-Man, Doctor Strange, and Speedball for Marvel, the Blue Beetle, Captain Atom, Congo, Gorgo, and the Question for Charlton Comics of Derby, Connecticut. This last character was Ditko's first public expression of the black and white moral view he took from his deep involvement in the objectivist philosophy of Ayn Rand, which would eventually overwhelm his mainstream career. Far from just drawing to a script, Ditko was an active plotter as well. Captions and dialogues were added after the story had been drawn. Stan Lee said this: "All I had to do was give Steve a one-line description of the plot, and he'd be off and running. He'd take those skeleton outlines I had given him and turn them into classic little works of art that ended up being far cooler than I had any right to expect." Ditko later created and independently published Mr. A, an avenging hero whose stories are more like mini rants, outbursts of angry finger-pointing. Most of his later work involved self-published mini-comics with partner Robin Snyder, his former editor at Charlton Comics. These were more illustrated lectures than comic book stories. Ditko was reclusive in his lifetime, giving no full-length, detailed interviews and leaving few letters behind. He simply kept creating and drawing in that same office for decades in Midtown Manhattan, long after his work was no longer popular in the comic book marketplace. Ditko also shared a studio at 43rd Street and 8th Avenue with the famed fetish artist Eric Stanton from 1958 to 1968. Ditko denied that he had ever worked on any of Stanton's pages or Stanton on his, but Stanton's account contradicts this. In Blake Bell's series on Ditko for Fantagraphics, Volume 5, Dripping with Fear, Bell identifies several Stanton-Ditko collaborations, short tales like Midnight Maiden, 1962, and Divorce Agreement from 1965-66 were filled with bosomy women in underwear in bondage or fetish poses. But I'll leave that subject to Betty Page. Stanton also says Ditko inked 3 major fetish books for him: Sweeter Gwendolyn, Confidential TV, and The Kinky Hook, all while producing Spider-Man and Doctor Strange at the same drafting table. In a 1988 interview, Stanton recalled that his contributions to Spider-Man was almost nil. He said that he and Ditko worked on storyboards together, and I added a few ideas. I think I added the business about the webs coming out of his hands.